on the other opposite end of it, I've had cases where it wasn't paranormal whatsoever, but it was addiction and mental health issues. Where I ended up calling social services and finding a way to get somebody in there to help the family because I walked into a David Lynch movie. I was like, what is going on here? Like, why is that? Why is your brother padlocked in a room? It's
Oh
like,
gosh.
why did your other brother pull a gun on my investigator? It's like, there's nothing paranormal going on here. There was clearly some mental health and addiction challenges and things that another one of these walked into a trap when I already knew this was not something we should be doing.
All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into our interview. Today, we have Mark Sarro from Astral Paranormal. He is an executive producer and one of the lead investigators as well, with Emily's brand new paranormal team. And she's got some really exciting things coming up, and we're super excited to have Mark on. He made some space for us, and we're just going to kind of jump right on into the questions. We do have about 10 to 12 questions for him to get his backstory and see what got him interested into the paranormal and investigating. He has tons of experience, and we are super excited to have him today. So welcome, Mark. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, guys, without further ado, I guess we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions. Emily, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So, other than being an executive producer and lead consultant for Astral Paranormal, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. Well, I am a partner in a audio and video production company where we produce everything from commercials to documentaries to music videos to short films, feature films. It really depends on the client, and the client can be everybody from a music creator to a film writer to a corporate client or company or customer, etc. Um, I in within the production company, one of my main roles are I'm a sound designer and a composer, so I do a lot of post production sound work. So for the gory horror movies, on the one making it sound really crunchy and gory and squirmy when the blood's squirting, and then on sets, a lot of times I'm what's known as a director of photography. Basically working with the director to basically take his vision and turn it in, or their vision and turn it into and use my techniques and technical skills to kind of execute on that vision, which is understanding camera placements and framing and movement and lighting and all those types of things. Um, I just finished DPing on a feature film in the last year that hopefully will come out sometime end of this year, if not early next year, which is a horror film. And then, I'm working on, as Emily knows, we've got a television show in the works based on Astral Paranormal. So on that, I'm one of the executive producers, I'm the director on set, and now I'm stepping in front of the camera with Emily as part of the actual investigative team. And then in post, I'm doing editing and you name it. So that's what I do. That's what I've been doing for been in video and audio production off and on for over 30 years. I stepped back into it full time only about 2.5, 3 years ago. Before that, I had a career in IT and all that not so fun technical stuff.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, how long have you actually investigated for?
So I'm a little older. I just turned 51 last month, and I've been investigating the paranormal since as soon as I got my driver's license at 16. The very first thing I would do, I started going out and chasing down urban legends and all the local haunts and stories. And I would go out and see what I could find. And sometimes, I'd get chased out by things, and sometimes I'd get chased out by people who didn't want me to be on their land. And, the things we do as a teenager. And then, I was basically a freelance investigator off and on up until the early 2000s. And then I started my first paranormal research group in 2004 based out of Westchester, Pennsylvania. That is still going without me. I turned over the reins a few years back. and that team is still going. And I've been an author in the paranormal for over 20 years now. I've got 4 books that have had published, and another dozen or so that I've helped write or contributed to for my publisher over the last 15 years. So
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a valuable thing. And you were into this before it was ever really a big thing. So that's pretty cool. I know a lot of us, I'm close to 40 myself, but I've kind of been in the paranormal myself for about 20 years, but I only got to watch it from TV. So finally, I'm doing it myself and excited to see that Emily's doing it as well in person because we've been doing a lot of remote work, a lot of remote work with clients and stuff. So that is fascinating. There wasn't, it was taboo back in the day for that kind of stuff, the paranormal stuff and everything. So it's interesting to hear that once you got your driver's license, you were on it. So this is your
yeah,
purpose and your path.
yeah. I grew up in the paranormal. My first experiences were I was young as 5 years old. So, and then as I got older, realizing that there's 4 generations of sensitivities on my mother's side of the family, going back to my great grandparents, that I seem to have just inherited, and just so coming to terms with that and all the other stuff, just when I got into formally researching and investigating, it was the right path because my goal and purpose was to help others understand it, to educate, to help folks get the power back when they're dealing with things that they don't understand, they don't know, because that's the most terrifying thing, especially for a family dealing with having young children and something's going on, they don't understand what's going on. Like my goal is not to get the quintessential piece of evidence; it's to give the family their power back, make them feel comfortable, and help them understand how they're going to have to coexist with whatever it is that's in their home. Because it's my experience, it's really hard to actually think they're going to purge or cleanse or get rid of something out of somebody's home, especially if it's the lower residual. You can't do anything about it, right? Residual, it's residual. It's an imprint. It's going to be there. It's just going to do its thing. You just got to deal with it, and either you learn to ignore it or you learn to coexist with it. And I think most of your typical residential hauntings is some type of residual energy, and but still can be frightening when you don't know what you're dealing with, and you see a shadow, or you see an apparition, or you hear something. It's you're not used to that. And, it's like I don't take for granted that I'm a bit desensitized to some of this stuff, but it's like I understand how terrifying it can be for parents and families when their kids are terrified and they don't know what to do and where to get help.
Absolutely. We love that because knowledge is power in the paranormal. The more you know, the less fear you have, the less fear you have, the less you will attract lower vibrational things or that energy. And the origin is the most important, trying to figure out where it came from. As humans, we like to find the answers to things, but you can't always put the paranormal in a box. So I absolutely love that. That's great.
Now, would you say what first drew you to the paranormal investigation would be your childhood experiences and your sensitivities, or, I mean, would it be something else, like trying to learn, or like all of the above?
Well, I say first and foremost, it's probably just my early childhood experiences. Just getting exposed to it, and I was the petrified kid. Like I wasn't. I have a general anxiety disorder, and I wasn't diagnosed with that until my mid late 30s. And I was this very anxious, nervous kid, and so everything frightened me. Everything was scary. And so on top of that, me waking up in the middle of the night to an apparition standing in my doorway and just screaming bloody murder, or then hearing footsteps walking up and down the halls and steps and cabinets and doors opening and closing and all this kind of stuff. And it was really pretty benign when you think about what was going on there. But I was terrified, like, because I was this 5-year-old kid who was just literally scared of butterflies. Living in this house that used to be a funeral parlor, that where I play with my Star Wars toys were these big concrete slab shelves where they worked on the bodies in the basement. I didn't know that. My parents, they kind of kept that from my siblings and I, because we were just kind of too young to really understand what was going on. But that's where it started. Just being exposed to it. Then as I got older and started kind of being more critical thinking and being more interested in it, I'm a bookworm, so I would grab any kind of supernatural occult type of book. As early as a preteen up into my teen years. Like I said, when I got my driver's license, now it's like, okay, now I've got wheels. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go check out this urban legend that happens at this graveyard over here, or where's the witch's tree over here, these types of things. And I would really hold vigil and wait and see what would happen. And sometimes, most of the time, nothing would happen. And there's a few times some things did happen. I also came across, and I don't think Emily and I have talked about this too much, but my theories about what I've encountered over the years has changed and evolved as I've gotten older and learned more, I've gained more experience. But I'm pretty convinced, and I actually talk about this extensively in my Ghosts of Delaware book, because that's the book that focuses on the four generations of my family, and I talk about my early childhood stuff all the way up into my late teens. That there is some kind of preternatural energy that I must have encountered, like hyper intelligent. And the way I would describe it is it will project and become whatever you project onto it. So if you're afraid of a giant spaghetti monster and you believe that the spaghetti monster is real, if you encounter one of these type of energies, that's exactly may how it presents itself to you. Doesn't mean it's actually a spaghetti monster, which to me is scarier, that this thing is that intelligent and that powerful that basically it can shapeshift and become whatever it wants to manipulate you and control your narrative, which I started experiencing as early as 12 all the way up into my 20s. And that was a dark time, like having to come to terms with how to deal with that, how to break the bonds that thing had over me. I can pinpoint some exact moments where I probably opened the door and let this thing in. But still, it was many years to kind of like gain control and figure out how to kind of start those spiritual practices and spiritual defenses that will give me the power to be grounded and to be able to project the light and kind of push that stuff away or sever that connection that those types of entities had to me. It's so that's where it really, long-winded story. That's where it started, was the experiences and just naturally realizing all the mistakes that I made in my quest for knowledge and experience, whether I was dabbling in, different types of spiritual and occult magic practices to other things. When I did finally start a group, and again, the mission and purpose was, let me help and educate folks to help them understand what they're experiencing and maybe help them not make some of the same mistakes that I've made, because they're avoidable if you have folks and trust folks around you to say, hey, if you do this, you're probably going to end up experiencing this. And unfortunately, I don't see a lot of good that comes out of those dark experiences, because they take a physical toll, emotional toll, mental toll, and on not on just in you, but everyone in your circle, everyone around you. And they can be very pervasive. And again, I've got stories and I've interviewed folks where they never recovered from those types of experiences, and it's ended in tragedy. And it's can be avoidable most of the times if you smart and do that spiritual defense, or do those practices before you engage in certain types of activity where you could leave yourself to become more vulnerable and open to things that you didn't invite, but yet coming to you because you're this kind of beacon and you've basically attracted it through this, wherever you are. So
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people that are meant to walk this path, I think we are introduced in a way. I know this sounds a little weird, but we're introduced in a way to these darker energies so we know how to deal with them, because without the experience of some of the things that we've been through, and I say we because I know Emily can relate, but also can I. And that's, it's really important to understand and get the experience of how these things work. It's like I never asked for my 10-year haunting. It just kind of happened and I had to figure out why. And
yeah,
it's fascinating to hear that you've came to that conclusion after all these years about how the like shapeshifters and entities. And I have a couple thoughts myself, and that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. One of my dear colleagues who has since passed away, she was probably one of the most renowned folks in the field, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She wrote 40 some books, multiple languages, and she wrote a book about the jinn, the East Middle Eastern spirits, the spirit, the trickster, this thing. And after reading her book and talking to her more, like I started thinking like, well, could I have actually encountered something at that level? Because that's how it acted. It was very manipulative and did things and would again shapeshift and be whatever it was that I was believing or projecting onto it, because that's what I was afraid of, right? And it made high school very difficult. Let's just say that, because I'm dealing with this mostly on my own, keeping it from everyone, friends and family. And it's like, all right, the only time I could get peace would be falling asleep in study hall, which I'd get in trouble for because, you're not supposed to be sleeping in study hall. But, it's like, well, I can't sleep at night because this thing terrorizes me and comes out of my dreams. And there it is. And it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do about that? So,
Wow. That's insane. That's crazy. I mean, All right. So our next question would be, what are some of the places that have stood out to you over the years that kind of, really made you frightened or interested or all of the above?
like I say, one of my go-to and my favorite places, and I'm really hoping that as Astral Paranormal grows and we hope we can spread our region a little bit and get more opportunities, is Gettysburg. Gettysburg was the subject of my second book, and we spent almost 10 years doing the research and investigations and everything that we did for that. And it never disappoints. Doesn't matter what time of year you go there, day or night. If you're in Gettysburg, you're more likely you're going to experience something, hear something, smell something. It's especially walking around inside in the battlefield park, through Devil's Den and Little Round Top and Triangular Field and all those places, the Wheat Field. I mean, these are places, if you think about it, 55,000 men died in 3 days during the Battle of Gettysburg. That is, some of the most insane energy and imprints and things you just, it's almost sometimes it's too much. Like because you can get overwhelmed by it very quickly. And like I said, every place I've been to in Gettysburg, every place we stayed at, investigated at, it's just, I mean, the Jenny Wade House and the orphanage were our top two places, and we would have those to ourselves for a week, 1 weekend a year, every year, usually in the wintertime, as we kind of were really digging into some experiments and just different approaches. Because I was doing ITC research starting back in like 2007, which is the whole spirit boxes, and I talked to I became friends with Bill Chappell, who was the guy that like published the design on how to make your own spirit box with the Radio Shack box, and built all these custom prototype devices that we use and still in Astral Paranormal, like the God helmet and the Video PX and the Puck and all these really crazy communication devices. But so Gettysburg, number one. In our area, I mean, it's hard. It's probably a close second would be Eastern State Penitentiary, Pennhurst, Fort Mifflin. Um, Alcatraz was a great place to get to go to and experience and investigate back in the day. But I mean, Gettysburg will still always be near and dear to my heart. But as far as most intense or scariest, would probably, again, a couple times in Gettysburg when my team at the time was at it's probably a peak of activity as far as the investigations we were doing, the community outreach we were doing, because I was teaching classes like at an adult night school about the paranormal. We had our own radio show. We had lots of things going on, almost too much going on. And my house was the center of the team because it was extremely haunted. Like I found out within hours of moving into this place how haunted this place was. So my first wife and I at the time decided, like, well, we should start a group, having both have a lifetime of paranormal experiences. That became the home base. We trained everybody there. We did experiments there, and we ended up it got weird. It got dark. Things would start to show up in other places that really had nothing to do with that particular location, which I think Emily and we may have experienced actually just recently at the Everett, and we've got our own theory about that, which we won't go into tonight. But so it's, again, you get out there, you do this stuff enough, you're no matter how much of a spiritual defense or practice you have, you're still exposing yourself. You're still vulnerable to the risk of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and kind of encountering something that just you happen to be there, and it's like, okay, you can hear me or you can see me, so now I'm gonna attach to you and I'm going to bother you until I either figure out if you're a threat or not, and if you are a threat, then I'm gonna wear you down and hopefully you'll give in to me, or if you're not a threat, then I'll move on to something else or someone else, right? That's I mean, unfortunately I've encountered that multiple times on cases over the years. That is partly why I retired from investigating, at least on the private cases back in 2020, 21. And really it was Emily and the team that kind of pulled me out of retirement and said, okay, well, I guess let's get back out there and maybe just blow the dust off of some of this gear and see if it still works. And here we are. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. We just actually I just stayed with Emily for a few days and I investigated Penhurst, and I have to say it was a very interesting energy specifically for me at the infirmary. We encountered something that was pretty dark that kept attacking like my solar plexus. I was literally in the middle of a sentence and it just like it's almost like something took its fist and just pushed in, and it like pushed all the air out in my words and funky smells. They say that there's a sewer line, but we wasn't smelling sewage. We were smelling like decay. I'm trying to be sensitive, but decay.
yeah.
It was pretty intense, and it was making the devices go off. And yeah, it was interesting. It's a big place. We're gonna have to go back, and next time I might try to see if Emily will come with me.
It's one of
But
those
yeah,
places that I purposely stayed away from for a number of years because the vibe I got was the energy's there. I'm not sure I really want to go mess with them too much because I've already messed with enough things like that that I don't need one more to be like, hey, and then I end up one of my young mentors who for her psychology degree had to do a study on fear. And so somehow got Penhurst to let her bring her psychology class and professor there for an investigation. And we were brought on as consultants. And so we're there till like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, I never said I would really do this, but here we are alone in the basement, and there are shadow figures jumping out behind doors and creeping on us and grabbing our legs. And it was just like, okay, like it's about what I thought it was going to be. And I did about an hour's worth of Reiki and, everything
yeah.
I could to like push the energy away and put up that light and that shield because again, I was not going to bring any of that home because it was dark like I expected it.
Yeah,
So
Reiki's such a blessing. I'm hopefully I have a friend that does Reiki for us before we go on investigations, and she's been such a blessing. And hopefully, I'll be learning myself soon. So,
All right. So you were talking about how you were using Reiki in that moment when you were at Penhurst with that psychology class. Can you go further into that and how, like, you use that when you get into maybe some, I don't know, situations that may call for that?
sure. So Reiki was something I didn't really get into until my late 30s, almost 40. And there was a really specific reason why, and again was born out of a dark case that I was involved in. But I too had always been kind of like an energy mover, energy practitioner. Just didn't know what to call it. I didn't have any specific discipline or modality to call it. Again, it's a generational thing. My family, like my grandmother, her thing was, I'll put your name in the Bible, and she'd pray on you, and things would happen. Like that was her way of interacting with the energy and with her Christian beliefs. And with my mom and aunts and uncle, like they were more spiritual, earth-based stuff, but with a Christian thing. And I'm probably the farthest thing from Christian, but it just the energy was always there. So once I got certified in as a Reiki practitioner, I would still love to actually get my master's level certification so I can actually teach and do atonements as well because there is a spiritual defense atonement that I found by a Reiki master that I've practiced a few times at locations like Penhurst or Eastern State Penitentiary or the Shanley Hotel up in Napanoch, New York, which is another one of my favorite locations. Usually, the Reiki comes out if one of my fellow teammates or investigators is struggling, whether it's and obviously usually something spiritual or energetically. And so I'll put up the power symbol and just kind of start with just giving them a little bit of helping them to give some space and some shielded energy, and using it really as the power as like a power up type of thing, right? Kind of setting that space, setting that boundary. Um, and it's a calming thing. It's a meditational thing, and uh, but Reiki in the traditional sense is a healing practice. The idea is that I would send Emily energy if she's having something, or I'm sending you energy if you're having something, and I can do it remotely or I can do it in person. Like We just did a Reiki session for somebody not that long ago that was here in the studio. So, it changes, and Reiki is not usually my go-to because at the same time, I've also noticed that if you sometimes you put up the power symbol, you end up blowing out whatever is in your vicinity, and I'm not trying to push it away. I'm actually trying to find that boundary where I can interact with it in a way that I can hopefully understand it. Right. It's interesting. I've had more channeling and deeper experiences, I think, working side by side with Emily these last few months than I've had probably in the last 20 years. Because to be honest, in my last group, we actually shunned psychics and sensitives, in the sense that I built the group to be a scientific based group, that we had protocols and procedures that we wanted to repeat and do in data collection. And we were all about the data and the evidence. And even though I was a closet sensitive on an investigation, if I experienced something, I would never say anything because I didn't want to take away from what the team was looking at, and I didn't want to influence them, even though I knew what I was experiencing. But it is a very subjective experience, and so sometimes, whether you mean to or not, you can end up, influencing the environment and influencing other investigators in a way. And so we really kind of kept that at bay. It wasn't until towards the end there, before I moved away and turned the group over, that I started actually opening up about that, and then being more open and more balanced around, okay, look, we can do the science, we can have the tools, we can do the data, but we also can be sensitive, because really, the best tool is the investigator themselves. So it doesn't matter if you got an EMF meter, if you're not 100% in the moment, if you're not, doing the things that's going to be best for you and your team, then it doesn't matter what devices you use or how you do go, what techniques you use. If you're not there, then it's gonna impact yourself, and it's gonna impact your team members and results, right? That's why Emily and I, with our team, we are so like strict about team dynamic and energy, because just by simple of us being in the environment, we're changing the environment. And if we're not all on the same page, if we're not vibing, if we're not like at least philosophically aligned with how we're doing things, it's not going to go very well. We're not, because we're going to be off doing our own things and our own agendas and our own motives. And Emily may be channeling over here, but somebody may be thinking they're provoking over there, and which we don't do. But it's really like you can't deny that the person's spiritual energy and the team's energy does not impact the environment, does not have an impact on the result of the investigation. And so striking that balance is what I've now kind of come into. Whereas before I'd be like, look, I appreciate that you're sensitive, but we don't want that on the team, just because of, again, we were kind of experiments and kind of data we were trying to gather and research we're doing. At that time, there really wasn't any room for it. But
Yeah, I mean, well said. I think it has a place. And I mean, if your purpose was to start with scientific, it's really hard to start with, a medium or a sensitive in a scientific way, because how do you measure that? And it's definitely became a lot more predominant, over the last, I'd say, 10 years now, and highly much more accepted. But one thing I have noticed is like there's a revolution starting, to where they're trying to shake out the grifters and the people that are just in it for the clout or the money and all that kind of stuff, which of course really disturbs, myself, and I'm sure y'all as well, with what a lot of people have done with it. So that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
yeah,
I want to say
yeah,
too, like with the Reiki, like when we were having issues with the mirror with our one team member, when you sent me that Reiki, it helped immediately. I felt that immediately. So like down the line, I want to learn that too, because transmuting energy is one of my biggest weaknesses, and I get affected a lot. So down the line, like if you're learning and you're trying to become a teacher, if you're looking to teach, I definitely want to learn from you for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got to reach out to my Reiki master to see if she's still teaching, because I would love to finish my learning with her and get my level 3 and master cert, so I could, I learned the hard way of trying to do an atonement before I was certified to be at that level. It had the exact opposite effect. Instead of like putting up power and healing, it sucked the life out of me. I was like, and then I'm like, because I got ahead of myself. Like, oh, I could do this. Let me try this attempt. And like, oh wait, you're not supposed to mess with these if you're not actually certified and practiced in that at that level. And like when I told my master what happened, she was like, "Dummy." I'm like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like, but
You learn, you live, you learn. That's how we learn, and those symbols are powerful.
yeah, they
The
are.
energy's powerful, and the without saying too much, because I know it's fairly, it's not secret, but it is. It's got to be kept to a certain level. Only a little bit has been shared with me thus far. But it's very powerful, and there's a lot of intention behind it. So yeah, and people are very protective of it. So that makes a lot of sense on why. And
Yeah.
plus, you have the energies associated with that. It was like access denied.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's for me, it's just another modality. It's another discipline. It's another tool for the toolbox, right?
Yeah.
Like I showed Emily a few weeks ago, I took a picture of my exorcism cross. Like, look, I found it. And it's this big, Catholic cross that I literally had as part of my exorcism kit back in the day when I was working towards being a demonologist, which, I don't want to do that anymore. But
Yeah.
you gotta go with what you know. I mean, I was born and raised Roman Catholic. I left the church as soon as I graduated high school, was probably agnostic, atheist, even borderline Satanist for a while, and then came full circle into Buddhism and more earth-based magic and practices. My partner, my wife Jessica, I'd say she's Wiccan without calling herself Wiccan. I mean, she has a group of sisters that they have rituals on around the full moon every cycle, and they're doing a lot of earth-based magic and things like that. And you gotta pull from what you know, and at the core, it's really what works best for yourself. The other thing I learned the hard way was you don't go into a place using religion or spiritual practice as a means of declaring warfare, because whether you meant to or not, that's what you just did. Because again, some of these energies they predate religion. So you going in there with a cross or some kind of prayer, they're just going to laugh and be like, "What is that?" Like, and and again, I can't tell how many cases I've come in behind other groups to clean up the messes that they made because they went into someone's home and did just that type of thing, thinking that, hey, we're the experts. We can come in here. We're going to blast it out of here. We're going to declare it. And then and then the moment they leave, everything is 100 times worse, and the family doesn't know what to do. And so it's like that's why they reach out to the next group. It's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that. So at the core, it's like whatever your spiritual practice or religious belief, it's got to work for first and foremost for yourself. When Emily and I do our spiritual debrief before an investigation with the team, that's the thing that I say. It's like it doesn't matter what you are, but do what works for you. Like go take a few minutes, set that intention, put that grounding and focus. Whether you're a Christian or a Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, I don't care. It's got to be what at your core what works for you. Um, because we Emily and I, why we have very similar spiritual practices, we can't project it onto everybody else in our team because they may not they don't believe it. If you don't believe it, it's not going to work. So and belief is a powerful thing. It's I've come to realize how powerful belief is, not just in spirituality, but in all things. When people have a belief about something and they wholeheartedly believe it, it's really hard to change their mind, good or bad, right? And so it's important to have that, that core center and do what works for you. Because, it's still, I still feel like it's the Wild West out here with the paranormal research, right? Because it's not an exact science. There are no true experts. There's no college accreditation. I mean, back in the day, there used to be parapsychology, but I don't believe there's a single university in the United States that offers any type of parapsychology degree now. So there's no real academic structure for paranormal research, right? So any team, any individual can go buy the device, come up with their own theories, come up with their own techniques, and just go out there and do it, and good or bad. And there's lots of, I think, well-grounded spiritualists and investigators doing good things, and then there's a whole bunch of people who just, like you said earlier, in it for the wrong reasons, thinking that this is a means to an end. I can become a celebrity or I can become rich because I'm a paranormal investigator. It's like that is the wrong reason to do it, and it's the wrong reason to do anything that's spiritually based or creatively based, because you're not going to get anywhere because you're always going to be chasing something for somebody else, not for yourself, right? So, um, I mean, I've been approached by production companies in the past. That, hey, we love your work. Would you give us your research for this case because we're doing an episode for this show? And I'm like, on the condition that that you use the data as it is and you give me at least some type of credit. Like, oh no, if you give us the stuff, we're going to do whatever the hell we want with it. I'm like, no, like I've spent 3 years at this location investigating, researching, and understanding, not just to give you my binder of stuff so you could just go and sensationalize it or exploit it or do whatever you want. I've had a company say, hey, we'll give your team a show, but you have to pretend that you're Amish.
The world?
Legit. Now, at the time, we were taking ourselves a little too seriously, so of course we said no. But if fast forward to now, if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, we'll give you a show if you pretend to be Amish," I'll be like, "Sure," but it's going to be a fictionalization of the whole thing. I'll be Hezekiah. Let me grow out my Amish beard. I'll show up on the wagon with the horse with my gear and churning butter. Let's do it. But don't pretend it's anything real because it's not. It's the most ridiculous thing, and that's the thing that like Emily and I have to balance with our show, right? Because we are creating a television show for the purpose of entertaining folks. Our strategy is we are going to sell the show to a streaming network or to a network, and hopefully we'll get picked up. But we're still trying to stay true to what we're doing. We're trying to to be ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, which is it's turning out to be a lot of fun because we have a lot of fun moments and we have a lot of like awkward moments as well, where it's like, okay, look at the chemistry between these two. It's like, so it's, and we're leaving that stuff in because it's like, we aren't taking ourselves too seriously. We take the practice seriously, we take the work seriously, but you can't be in these locations for 8, 10, 12 hours and not have fun and not, just be able to cut loose and realize these are long nights. You're sitting in dark locations doing intense things that can take sometimes nothing can happen. Other times a lot of things can happen and you got to kind of just to process it. We use humor and we use, our support of each other to kind of get through. It's like, wow, that was intense. Like, again, some of the things we experienced just a few weeks ago, pretty intense stuff, not the common things that we would expect to encounter there, which will be interesting when we present some of that stuff to the theater, because I don't think they were expecting anything like that. Like, it's the little girl spirit, or it's the woman, it's the Mr. Whiskey. It's like, oh, well, there's something else that decided to come visit us tonight and showed itself to Emily in multiple ways. Here's the painting.
Paintings, drawings. I did a few.
Paintings, drawings. Here's the video of the showing when it's happening in real time. So, and here's Mark going.
That's awesome. And the paranormal can be predictable, but it's still unpredictable at the same time. So it's fascinating. I like the idea of how y'all get to go in and continue the investigation and gather the evidence, because that's it's fairly unique because a lot of people don't get to do that. So that is a blessing and very cool. I like that.
And I'm of the camp that I'd rather investigate one place 20 times than 20 places one time, because you have to build a relationship with the environment, with the spirits. It's like Emily and I were talking just recently about the spirit box, and she was saying, like whenever I use your portal or your box, like it sucks, like it doesn't work. I'm like, well, because it's my box, like it's one of those, and of course we didn't realize that until after using it a few times together, and or she'd go off on a solo thing and she's using my spirit box, and she's like, I don't like it. Nah, like, and she's like, no offense. I'm like, no, it's none taken, because you build a relationship with it. The more you use it, the more you kind of you're building those connections, and it's kind of, you can't expect someone to like, hey, can I wear your shorts that you've been wearing for 20 years? Because they're here, like they're not going to be really comfortable for you because there's somebody else's shorts, right? So it's the same thing. So it only makes sense that Emily would have her own spirit boxes, her own devices that she's building the relationships with, because in my experience doing this research is the more time you put on with the devices, the stronger the connection becomes, and then it becomes undeniable that you actually are communicating with something. not just the random bits of radio beat pieces that will sometimes come through on the FM or AM band. Like you will get things that can speak full sentences over top of a sweeping band that is clearly above, or above it's not part of that radio frequency. And I've had things, speaking different languages and calling my name and cursing me out and all those types of things and growling. And it's just there it's another means of facilitating real-time communication. But you can't just expect to turn one on and it automatically going to start working for you, because in my experience, it doesn't work that way. So
Yeah. It's fascinating. We've not been doing it very long for our Appalachian Nightmare, and we just got the opportunity to start returning to certain locations. And I noticed that the activity the second time around was definitely more intense because I'd already done the channeling and all that. So I got all that out of the way and then just went in there. And it's like the spirits did know who we were and they were more apt to come up to us. So that's fascinating. It's really, really awesome. And since we're on the topic of tools and stuff, the next question is, do you have a specific tool that you like to use the most, or is there any tools that you would like to highlight? And I know one that I would like to hear about is the God helmet.
I could go put it on if you want. Now, so I've always kind of focused more on ITC, instrumental transcommunication. So using different devices. And to me, ITC is not just a typical spirit box, but it is a pendulum. It is dowsing rods. It is the sensitive. Like we ourselves are ITC devices, because if we're channeling or receiving and getting information, well, we are the device that's communicating with the spirit, right? So I've always been really kind of drawn towards devices in that umbrella, but more specifically, like these weird prototype devices that, like the God helmet, like the video PX, the paranormal puck, the Ovilus, all these things where it's a device. It's an array of sensors that's picking up changes in the environment with multiple different ways, and then mapping it to either words or phonemes or different things as a means of communication. Like the Envoy is a new device that we just recently started using, which was made by Dave Giuliani from South Jersey Ghost Research. It has these different modes where it has like emoji mode where it'll respond to in emojis, or just yes or no, or it'll the alphabet mode, or numbers, or so it's just a different means. And I think so far, I think our most successes with Astral has been probably like some type of spirit box in some ways. And even like the EMF tripwire has been an interesting, like, well, hey, can you do this or do that? And they go, I'm like, okay, thank you, I did it. So, but the God helmet through and through is my favorite device because it's probably the most unique, and for me, it's like it's my superpower for getting me in tune with the environment to open me up so I can channel and because oftentimes for me, I've put up so many layers of defenses over the years because of things I've experienced that I'm doing it without even really thinking about it. And so that using the God helmet kind of helps me kind of bring me into the environment, bring me in up to that higher vibration so that now I can be more open and receptive in a safe way. And it works. It works for me. I know, Emily, you've used it once or twice. You're like, it was the opposite. It was actually like
it like closed me off.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's like it helps me fine tune, right? It helps me kind of like it's like again tuning in the radio to get that perfect signal. Like that's how I use it. It's how it helps me kind of like do that because it's again I've had to just block stuff out so much, and I do it. It's part of my daily practice because peace and quiet is what I try to protect it all. Keeping the spirit stuff away. When I don't want to experience it, it helps me kind of like create that. It's like a VPN. It creates that safe connection into the spirit world in a way that I can have those open experiences. And again, some of the most intense things channeling with that has been with Emily, working side by side with her in these last few investigations where we were just like we were filling out the complete picture of what it was that we were communicating with, where we had years and dates and details and all of these things. And it's like I remember afterwards it was like, okay, that just really happened. It's like, I mean, and the other time, I mean, the last time that something like that profound happened would have been in the orphanage in Gettysburg,
Mm,
where I had, we were in the hole, which is a place in the sub basement where the original matron of the orphanage would punish the children by putting them in barrels of water standing up to their chest, or they chain them to the walls. And so this little boy just came up to me and told me his name, told me everything that happened to him, why he was punished. And I was just like, oh. Because I had an investigator sitting across from me and then another one sitting outside. And when the boy left, my investigator sitting outside saw the shadow figure of a child just like walk out past her. And I'm like, okay, so that wasn't just in my head. So obviously, like, I tuned into something. And again, but now fast forward to this year, I've had more of those types of experiences working with Emily than I've had, in previous years. And I think it's because we're starting to build that trust with each other, right? We're not afraid to be like, this is what it is, like, and because of that, it's like we're kind of like building that safe space, that sacred space, in a way that things are just coming forward, and we're validating it, like, which is even more amazing. Like the things I've seen Emily validate
Mhm.
already on some of these investigations, I'm like, all right, you know,
yeah. Yeah, and I can relate to that because prior to us kind of, it's not that me and Emily have split ways, but we've split some of our work over the last, I'd say, year or so. Like prior to that, me and Emily would work cases together, and it's a beautiful thing when you have two sensitives that come together and can get in that kind of ebbs and flow of energy, I guess you could say, and
yep,
just fly. And I honestly think like when you're around people that are intuitive, you kind of where you're playing off each other's energy, it really like raises the vibration and you're able to really put it together. So I have to say I'm super excited to see what y'all have in store. And I wish I could come back on October 10th. Unfortunately, I can't. It's about a 7 or 8 hour drive. I wish I could though, because I'd be there. I'd love to be there. But yeah, I'm excited to see what y'all have in store.
That would be amazing. Dude, when we were together in the hotel room, just being in person, like we had some crazy experiences. And then when you were here last week, just being in the same
Mhm.
space we
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Yeah. It just intensifies things. So,
yeah,
I can validate that for you guys because I've experienced it with Emily myself and of course, other mediums. But I guess the closest medium that I've worked with is Emily because I think we've probably talked almost every day for the last 3 years, at least a
Hmm.
meme or something. So, I
Facts.
mean, it's very interesting in the point that you bring up and how I don't know why it happens. It just sometimes the magic happens, and especially when you find friends and people that you get along with. I think it makes it even more intriguing and more in depth. And oh, I did want to ask one thing before we
sure,
move on. Can you explain just briefly what the God helmet is and does for the viewer that may not know what it is?
sure. So this particular iteration of this device, so again, this was another prototype device that Bill Chappell from Digital Dowsing had made for me back in like 2007. And he made a handful of these, and it was based off of another existing device that had come around during research in the 80s. So basically, what the God helmet is, and the reason why it's called the God helmet, is because of certain types of experiences. But it's basically called a temporal controller. So what it is, it's an array of sensors that you will wear on a headband that's like either on either your left or right temple or near your temple, and it connects to a handheld device that is basically flooding your brain with EMF that is of the same brain frequencies, like the theta waves and all that. And this particular version of it has multiple modes, and the mode that I'm using at 99.9% of the time is called environmental mode, which is the idea that you use it in an environment, it's raising you or bringing you into the same vibration and the same frequency, and then it kind of helps you kind of get into that environment. But it also will interact with a piece of software directly connected to a computer, where you can program it and say, I want you to do these type of brain waves for this long period of time, and then these waves, and it can create lucid states. So the reason it's called the God helmet is that some folks have had such profound experiences that they actually believe that God was in the room with them
Wow.
because
That's amazing.
it's that profound. And it's a it has this there's an audio plug we can wear headphones with it where it's really you're hearing like an audio representation of the oscillating frequencies and things that's happening, and it's very like beeps and bloops. And I think it's intentional in a way so that it's kind of helping you tune out what's going on around you. And it's funny is when I know it's working, the first thing that I start hearing are usually some type of siren, like an
Hmm.
auditory hallucination, like a siren. And I'll be like, hey, no one hearing, is there sirens going off? And I'm like, no. I'm like, okay. It's like almost like an air raid siren. And then it's the background, the murmuring voices, the chattering. It's like the things start to kind of come forward. And at first you can't really understand or hear what any one thing is saying because it's just this cacophony of voices are coming. And then again, it really comes down to the environment and the connection that, something may then really step forward and give you a very clear picture of what it is that you're interacting with, and that's been the case. I mean, it's for me now it's happening much more frequent and it's happening much more clearer because I think again, because of the team and Emily working side by side with her in these spaces where we just seem to like it's like we're amplifying each other's sensitivities in a way that's just it's just like we're opening a portal and we're keeping the portal stable so things can easily come through and talk to us and it becomes pretty clear what it is we're actually experiencing and clear enough that we know when something is not what says it is, right? Because
Hmm.
we've experienced that as well. I mean, that's the other inherent risk of working with some of these types of devices on the ITC side because you're trusting that what you're communicating with is actually what it says it is. And there are those occasions where it is not. It is not at all what it says it is. It's playing a game with you. And if it's something of a higher intelligence and preternatural intelligence and I'd like to say evil, but negatively charged, it's going to try to be manipulative and it's going to try to, convince you that it's something else that is entirely. And that's where with your experience, right, and your desire to learn and grow and know, you can start to feel those things out and understand that you may have fooled somebody else, but you're not going to fool us because we know you're not what you say you are. And then usually for me, that's when it's like, okay, we're closing this down because we don't need to talk to this thing because it's not going to be truthful no matter what
Yeah.
we ask it, even if we call it out. So why would we leave a connection open to this thing? Because in my experience with working with darker cases, if as soon as we realize that what we're dealing with is this dark or negative energy, we shut the whole thing down. We actually purge the evidence. We get rid of the recordings. We get rid of the video because I believe that draws power to it.
Yeah.
And the more power you bring to it, obviously the stronger it gets, the connection it gets, and that's when it starts reaching out and will start testing you and probing you and pushing on you at your home or at your families or because now you're on its radar. You are a threat because somehow you've established this connection, whether you wanted to or not. Where if you're not prepared for that and you know how to handle it, it can be very difficult to overcome that and break the bonds, like I was saying earlier, to break the bonds and the ties or something like that. Because now that's not the everyday thing, right? That's
Yeah.
like I always say, it's like the 0.02% of the paranormal, but it's still there. It does exist. It's not all fun and games. I mean, there's some very serious things out there that we really don't know about well enough about to know what we're dealing with. With any real accuracy. Other than our intuition, our gut, our feelings, and some other types of devices or things we're interacting with it with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the explanation you gave. Very thorough. And for longtime viewers of Lights at Midnight, that's what I refer to as energy threads. So what Mark was just saying, like it's a great example of how when something kind of seeds itself, or even like as a medium or a sensitive, I've noticed when we look into the abyss, it
looks
looks
back.
back. And, it's when I do my remote viewing and remote channeling and stuff, if it's something pretty dark, I've noticed I have anywhere from 1 to 4 seconds before that entity, when I'm helping clients, notices I'm there. And once it notices I'm there, it's like it's an energy thread all the way back. So it's a vice versa thing. So by getting rid of your evidence and just cutting all ties to it, it's really smart. And it's a good way to kind of, even if it's great evidence, but then you have to have the certain paranormal investigators or an individual that's really into it. It's like could have been your best piece of evidence ever, and you just don't
Yeah,
want to get rid of it,
yeah,
but
and
then
that's the risk. Like it can't always be about the evidence, right? Like especially
yeah,
if you're dealing with a client, where you're trying to help them. It's what's most important is how can you help them safely in a way, and they don't need the evidence. The
no,
client oftentimes, I mean, they're already convinced that whatever's going on is going on. It's our job to try to help them better understand what actually it may be, because those who aren't experienced with it can misinterpret it as something evil or negative when really it's not. And then the opposite, where it is something, there's all the red flags that are there. It says, okay, there's something really not good here. We have to tread lightly and figure out how we can help this family or help this individual in a way that I'm not going to basically put myself at such a risk that I won't be able to recover from it. And that's why I've given the paranormal safety lecture to Emily and our team multiple times about like it'll probably be some time before we as a team will commit to any kind of investigation in somebody's home, because we don't have the collective experience as a team to know how to handle and react, because those things can turn on a dime, and when you're not prepared for it, I've seen investigators who I thought were ready just melt down and turn into mush, and that I have to intervene and physically take them out of the environment, and then do the Reiki or do some other spiritual thing that will help them get their center back and help them recover, because it's like it literally knocks the wind out of you, it's or sweep you off your feet, and when not in a good way, so.
yeah, I respect that. I mean, that's fact, and that's the thing is like I'm trying to be easy with my words here. I'm not trying to pin anybody's name or anything because I don't have anybody in mind, but you have a certain type of people and you have a other certain type of people in this industry that they can get their priorities a little, messed up. So that's great that you would do that. And we need more of that in this community, in my personal humble opinion.
I will say, like, chats, one thing, like, when I was dealing with some of my cases, one thing that you taught me is it's good not to tell them everything that you've picked up through channeling because of the fear aspect, but also, like, sometimes they dwell on it. And there are those that had been like investigating on their own, and it kind of becomes addictive and they want to see for themselves and they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And when you have a haunting within your own house, the last thing you want to do is doing like either the apps or the spirit box sessions. You don't want to keep doing it because that's not going to get them to go because that's inviting them in and then it's just a cycle. And so not telling them certain pieces of information is probably the best thing.
Yeah.
And just going straight to the point is better than
Learning to keep your composure
mhm,
when, excuse my language, shit is hitting the fan in front of the client or your other team members is a valuable skill,
mhm,
because to Emily's point, you can start a chain reaction that could go turn into a cartoon where everyone's running around, running in the wall, just acting, unhinged because they're acting out of fear or terror because now they don't know what to do. And again, especially when you're trying to help somebody, and you have to be careful with what you reveal to them, because while you may be better equipped to understand it and deal with it, they are not, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's it's the fact that you proceed with caution is very heartening, because that's again, a lot of folks get themselves in trouble because they rush in without thinking about the cost to themselves or to others, just because they want the experience or they want to see it and feel it or hear it for themselves, and not realize, well, you just walked into a viper pit of energy, because you didn't take the time to understand what you were actually getting into before you just walked into it, right? Which again, I've walked into those types of traps where, because of the weakest link in my chain was one of the eagerness of one of my other investigators who said, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it's like, we'd say, no, you're not going to do this. And they go do it. And then we have to go to support them because we don't let anyone go by themselves. And next thing you know, we're like, okay, here we are.
Yeah.
I just got,
Yeah.
got punched and I'm on my knees and this thing is telling me it's going to kill me. Great.
Yeah. You never want that. It's so important. Like you said, composure is everything. You don't want to tell a client that, you don't want to give all details. I've just learned myself, and this ain't about me, but just for the listener, I've just learned that you have to kind of sum the information up, just give them what they need, because you don't want to describe everything you see, because I've seen people crack. I mean,
Yeah.
I've just seen people clients just crack, and it's just not fun. It's not right. I had to learn the hard way. I didn't have a teacher, I didn't have a mentor or any support, along the way, and just trial and error. But luckily, I'm fortunate that, it never ended up too crazy. There's only a couple cases that I've had where we couldn't fix it. And it still hurts my heart, because I get so emotionally invested, and I think we all do in this chat. I think we can all say we're very much emotionally invested, and when you see that, it's just hard. But sometimes, here's a question. I just have one question for you. Have you ever advised anybody to leave their home or to try to move away from a certain situation if it couldn't have been handled?
There's been a few cases where that was an option on the table. The one case that I've told Emily that the deep dark story about, fortunately the family had already moved out of the house, and we were there really to try to validate or verify that whatever it was at the original home didn't follow them, go with them to their new place. Um, I one of the stories that I write about in my first book, which is on Westchester. It was just purely an interview. I didn't actually investigate, because the gentleman that told me the story, this was probably a couple years after the fact, and it ended in tragedy. It ended up with his wife being institutionalized and never recovered. She had a full schizophrenic break, and just never, because this energy just feasted on them and ravaged their relationship, ravaged the family, and she got put in the hospital. He lost everything, and then still, again, at the time, this is 2008, 2009, and at the time I interviewed him, it had been 2 years, and he was still devastated, still broken by the events that happened. And that's like the worst case, tragic. My heart broke at the idea that his life was ruined by this thing. And I've had cases that I've actively been involved in that have come close to that. I've also had some cases where that kind of thing was involved, but the people in the center of the case, instead of like them moving out, they actually tried to give us the home title and deed. Like, they were willing to sign the house, like they own the house outright. They were willing to sign it over to us and give it to us. I'm like, I don't want this house. Like, you've had 50 some deaths on this property, all these freak accidents. Your pets are getting killed. Your husband that got hospitalized twice because something threw him down the stairs. I don't want this house. Like, I'm not staying in this. Like, I don't like coming to this house. I'm like, you think I'm gonna give it to me? Like, what am I gonna do with this freaking house? Like, I'm gonna burn it to the ground. So I'm gonna do with it. Like, but it's um so that, really, to come back to your question, it's that's a thing of last resort.
Yeah.
To think that you have to vacate the home or vacate the property that you're at because you have no other recourse. Like I said, I've had cases where that's happened, but they've already took that step on their own, and it was probably the best step for them to do, um, because it was the land itself that was bad. Like, whatever was at their home wasn't just at their home; it was at the whole neighborhood was being negatively impacted, and it seemed like it was land based. So them getting out of that house and getting away from that land was probably the best thing they could have done. Um, but it's also, you know when you work in those types of dark cases, it's also knowing your limits too, what you can reasonably deal with, what you can't deal with, and having a good team network of people that you may be able to pull in and say, hey, I'm going to refer you to so and so because, or I'm going to consult with so and so because this is more their wheelhouse, and I don't have the answers, and I'm not going to pretend like I have the answers because I really don't know. I mean, we've you go through the process of investigating and trying to understand what's going on, but sometimes you kind of hit that wall and realize this is more than I can handle and more than I can deal with, and so I'm going to go to the big guns and actually pull in people like I used to consult with, like the guys like John Zaffis and like those brothers that were demonologists from TAPS, and it's like you, that's what there's folks that specialize in that. God bless them. I thought that was a path for me at one point, and I realized nope. I after I went on one exorcism, that was the last exorcism, and like nope, I don't want everyone to do that again. Like that's just it was not
No,
a fun experience. You
I've
sleep with
ran
a line
into
over you for
two. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you
yeah,
were
you're
done.
right, yeah,
I
yeah,
run into
yeah.
two possessions in my time in person, and even with my faith, with my spirituality, and I think I am stronger now than I probably would handle it different now than I would have. But the last one was terrible. You know, people just going out of consciousness and then coming back as a totally different person, and like there was a higher power, what I call God, was with me that day because I don't know how it would have went, but I've been there, and it's not for the faint of heart.
Nope.
It's not for the faint of heart at all.
No.
It's terrifying, and you can't always help everybody, and that's why I wanted to ask, like, if you had ever suggested anyone to move. I've only had to do it one time so far, but I'm only like 5 years in, and it's disheartening. But it is for those that are watching that may have paranormal issues, that is the last resort, and you don't just want to jump to the conclusion to get out of here because it's your space. So, and I
Yeah.
really like the fact that you mentioned to bring in people that specialize in certain things. That's really important. If you're just one person or maybe two people, if you can't handle it, you got to pass it off. If you can't help the people, you can't help them. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's knowing your limitations, and that's the greatest service you can do to yourself and to your client is you be honest and truthful about what you can and can't do, because we aren't all things. Like we all have limits. Some of us have, maybe a higher threshold for some certain things, but still those limits are there, and I think being able to recognize those and embrace those because those are those like fail safes that hopefully will keep you from stepping too far into a certain direction and something that will keep you safe, which is something that's why I think Emily and I we're like peas in a pod because we preach that because it's like, look, don't come out here and investigate and get the experience just because you think that's what you have to do. If you're not ready or you're not in the right frame of mind, spiritually, physically, you're not doing yourself any good. You're not doing us any good because if we're in a place that we don't know what we're dealing with and you are vulnerable, well, you are the weakest link in the chain, which is going to make the rest of us vulnerable. And that's, I've excused myself from investigations over the years because I was not in the right headspace, whether it was emotionally, physically, spiritually. The ambush that I walked into that ended up breaking up my group for 5 years was a case where I wasn't prepared because I was in my mind, my commitment was we're going to meet this person at a neutral public space. We're going to hold the interview. We're going to consult with them. That's as far as it goes. Because I'd already determined that there was no reason for us to go to their property, go to their house. There's nothing to investigate. But somehow we ended up there anyway, and it was like walking into an ambush. And a year later, this thing shows up at my house, and this is after I've like 100% stopped investigating. I was living in another state. I was living in a house that was owned by a church. I was the only non-pastor to live there in the 50 years of this house because the one pastor was retiring and the other one was coming in, so they rented out the house. And this thing came to this house and beat me into the ground. And that was when my now partner and I decided, okay, it's time for Reiki. It's time to go get certified. It's time to become a practitioner because she was powerless. She watched me crumple on the floor and stop breathing. and didn't know what to do. And I had a friend, another friend who happened to be a Reiki master there, who pulled me out of it because this thing was literally, it beat me into subconscious, unconscious. So yeah, it's, there's so much to it.
Yeah, there is. It's crazy, it's crazy I mean, I'm a person that says everything happens for a reason, but it's sometimes hard to find those reasons when it can be that bad.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I try to look at it myself as an experience. It's an experience because I've noticed even like the clients that I end up having, we always have something in common. There's always some type of common ground or an experience that I've had so similar to theirs that I can relate and at least help them. It's almost for me like, well, and I would say maybe even just anybody that does this, you're kind of like, and I say this lightly, and obviously, not for real. I can't legally, but you're like a therapist in a way. A little bit like you're working with the client. At least that's my role. I have to, work with them on that and, all kinds of stuff. So it gets pretty deep.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you touch on something too. It's like there's a fine line you walk, because you had to be careful of the consult, or the because if something really goes off the rails bad, they're kind of come after you, right? They're going to say,
Yeah.
you told me to do this, or you said that I should do this, and you're not a therapist. You're not a. It's like, whoa, hold on. It's like, pump the brakes. I mean, I've on the other opposite end of it, I've had cases where it wasn't paranormal whatsoever, but it was addiction and mental health issues. Where I ended up calling social services and finding a way to get somebody in there to help the family, because I walked into a David Lynch movie. I was like, what is going on here? Like, why is that? Why is your brother padlocked in a room? It's
Oh
like,
gosh.
why did your other brother pull a gun on my investigator? It's like,
Mhm.
there's nothing paranormal going on here. There was clearly some mental health and addiction challenges and things that another one of these walked into a trap when I already knew this was not something we should be doing. But again, one of my investigator consultants, she was committed to going to this place. I'm like, all right, well, we're not going to let you go there by yourself. So I went, and then my other partner went, and it was instant regret, because, like, literally, the guy, the woman's brother came home, pulled a gun out of his waistband, stared my partner down. I didn't see it happening. I was standing behind him, but I watched the color like drain from my partner's face. It was like cartoonish. So he went like white, and I'm like, and his eyes. I'm like, and then the guy like left. I'm like, well, what happened? He's like, the guy just freaking pulled a gun and just stared me down as he put it into his gun locker. I'm like, cool. Let's
That's crazy.
go.
Mm.
It's time to go.
Yeah, so a lot of different people in the world and a lot of people that need help. That's for sure. Just help that we
Yeah.
can't give them.
Well,
Also,
yeah.
I was gonna say I'm so glad I went to like school and got a degree in like social deviance psychology and studied people and how they work because it does help like differentiate between mental health issues and like paranormal and just knowing how to help people with attachments, but also um, just knowing which ones are paranormal and which ones are strictly mental health. Because I would say about 65 to 70% of my cases that I get are just mental health. So,
Yeah, because folks just really want someone to listen to them
yep.
and believe them, and they don't know, they're for whatever reason they're convinced that it is spiritual or paranormal. They're being attacked, or they're being haunted or possessed, and they don't know how to come to terms with, well, you've got some unprocessed trauma, or you're dealing with a multitude of things that and it's, again, walking that fine line, because we aren't licensed therapists, we aren't psychiatrists or psychologists or any of that. And we can't be giving, you got to be careful about the kind of advice we give. And that's where it's like, again, I know my limit, like, okay, you need a professional, you need, let's find you some help. And I will take the steps to help them find somebody to talk to, and then back out of the situation, knowing that hopefully they're in better hands than I left them with, right? Than I started with, because it's, again, your heart breaks when you make that realization that the person that is looking at you for answers and convinced it's the paranormal, and you already know it's not. and how to navigate that in a way that you're not giving bad advice, you're not causing them to go deeper off into this psychosis or whatever you want to call it. It's a fine line, and the reality is, and I'm sure you both have experienced this. That, the more attention you bring to the work that you do, the more you attract those types of folks. And having good things in place to help you kind of weed those folks out or understand those folks is really critical, because again, I've seen so many mistakes made by groups who walk into cases under false pretenses and either getting physically attacked or, there's a group of women that were investigators where they got sexually assaulted, and it's like we're like nightmare fuel. And it's like, I don't fear the living, the dead. I fear the living. Like, it's especially going into somebody's home. You don't know what you're walking into, even if you think that it's until you're in that environment and you're sitting down on their couch or they're in their living room and you're like, okay, here we are. Let's see what happens. It's like all bets are off, even if you think you've vetted it and you've figured it out, because again, anything can turn on you.
Yeah.
And, you know, and
Yeah.
that's where it helps, like, to have, contracts in place and types of liability waivers and things like that, because that way that they can't hold you liable and you can't hold them liable, because, that's just, again, that's nightmare fuel. It's the stuff that none of us want to have to deal with, but yet it's out there. I mean,
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, it gets a little wild. And then you have that fine line of, like, it can be trauma and paranormal. And then it's like it can get very vast and very crazy
yes.
quick.
Yeah. My first wife was extremely sensitive to the paranormal, and some of my most intense, profound experiences were side by side with her. But she also was carrying some of the most serious trauma of things that have happened, from her childhood and her previous things. And it's like, it's really hard to untangle those, because
Hmm.
sometimes they are so intertwined that,
Yeah.
it's like, how do you manage that, right? You got to be careful. But
Yeah. And I mean, you've done this a lot longer than me, but in the time frame that I've done it, I've realized, it's mostly paranormal stuff for a good chunk of it. A really good chunk of it comes from trauma, residual energy, hauntings, haunted person, haunted place, haunted object, or it comes from invoking or going for something, going and reaching and searching. So, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, I'll be like 99% of it's trauma, but it's not really the best way to look at it. It can be several things, but trauma is a big part of it, and how things become haunted too. So
yeah.
just one facet, but a big facet.
And the reality is, can you name one person in your life that that doesn't have some type of trauma? We're all dealing with it. We're all,
Right.
whether it's our physical ailments or the things from our past. I mean, I have PTSD. I was diagnosed a few years ago, and it's something I've had my whole life, and I learned how to deal with it on my own. And, you know, but it wasn't until just a few years ago finally, like, oh, well, now it really kind of, it's all kind of making sense. Some of the things that that I've struggled to deal with through my life because of the trauma that was the result of that, right? So we all have it. We all have it in different levels and degrees. Some of us, unfortunately, have it much worse than others. But I don't know a single person that I've come that hasn't had some form of emotional, physical trauma, or that's, I think, human nature, right? And
Yeah.
if we're all willing to help each other out and be honest about what we can and can't do, it's that's really the purest way we can actually help somebody, right? Is
Yeah.
not pretending to be something that we're not, because it doesn't really help anything.
No, and healing I mean, it depends on the way you heal and the way you transmute what happened. And healing is so important, you know, for that. I mean, some people I've noticed that have trauma that do have a legit paranormal activity, the more they heal, the more it just goes away, because it doesn't have a place. There's not a vibratory match for it to
Yeah.
even stay anymore. So yeah, it's a fascinating, vast subject for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know we've kind of, I mean, would you agree? I mean, anybody here, would you agree? Have we talked about the core philosophy or approach when investigating a haunting or unexplained phenomenon? I think we pretty much, unless Mark, you had something specific you wanted to say to that, you've pretty
No,
much covered that.
yeah, I mean, I think we touched. I mean, again, I think it's, comes down to whatever your personal belief or spiritual practice, you got to stay true to what you are. Don't 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 make any assumptions. Do the work, do the defensive practice. Make sure you're good spiritual health before you go into these places. Know your limits, know your boundaries, and intentionally set those boundaries at the start of the investigation, right? Knowing what you're willing to experience or not willing to experience. Because again, you go into these places and you don't really know for certain what you may be encountering. It's it's good to have those boundaries set, and that's really what it comes down to. And just make sure you trust the people that you're with. If you don't, if you're even if you have just you and a partner or you're in a team, that is so important. Making sure you have that trust and you're taking the time to build that relationship with the people they're working with. Because again, Emily and I and our team, we're just getting better. It's every investigation. The more time we spend with each other, the more we come to know each other and we realize, hey, we're all people doing. This is who we are. We're not trying to be anything that we're not. We're generally trying to go in and have these experiences and learning that we can trust each other, and that's a core component. I mean, that's because again, if you're going to a place to try to find answers and help somebody, and if you're not, again, if I've said this before, if you're not on the same page, then it's gonna throw everything off, and it's anything it's going to end up blocking your ability to really understand what's going on because of one person or a few people or whatever the dynamic of the relationship, the team that you're with, right? Because again, we've experienced that together as well. It's like, huh, all right, well,
Yeah.
now we know.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
Mhm. What's the most common misconception people have about paranormal investigations?
That it's like the TV shows. I think, like if all your exposure to real paranormal stuff is through these reality shows, it's it can be like that some of the time, but most of the time it's not. You know, you're in an environment for hours, and you could have you could be doing a session, whether you're doing traditional EVP or spirit box or whatever, and you could be going 40-45 minutes and it's just flat. There's absolutely nothing going on, and that can be physically draining and tiring because you're trying to focus and trying to intensely be aware of your surrounding and your environment. And it's that's why we bake in breaks and we try to, like, again, just change the mood a little bit, because it you get very fatigued. I know, Emily, you call it your paranormal hangover, right? Like,
Hmm.
you go hard, it's the next day, it's like a recovery day, like especially for us because we don't
Yeah.
typically wrap until like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and it's like, oh, look, the sun's up. It was down. It was up when we started here, and it's up again. So, all right, cool. And I'm gonna go sleep the day away because that's what we got to do. But I think it's just that it's anything like the TV shows. It's a lot of patience. You gotta have a lot of patience, a lot of just understanding that it's not gonna do what you want it to do. It's gonna You just have to build that trust with it as well. Like, you can't go into an environment, and it could be the most haunted place in the world. If you just start like giving it commands to do things or show yourself, and it's like, well, mm, no, like, I'm gonna go over here and not talk to you, like, not interact with you. And I've been with groups as a guest and watch they work and they do that. And it's like, all right, 3 hours later and still nothing's going on because you shut you shut the door on it before you even try because it doesn't want anything to do with you. It's like, so I think that's one of the big is this. It's not like the TV shows most of the time.
Yeah, and I think that really covers the next question, unless you have something else to add, is like your thoughts on the sensationalism of the paranormal field, and how do you avoid that in your own work? I mean,
Well, I think there's been some benefits, to because like I think you made the comment earlier on was about the taboo, how it was a taboo, right? It's very I mean, even in 2006 and 2007, when I was writing and researching for my first book, I've had doors literally slammed in my face and people laughing at me because I'm like, hey, you got any like anything paranormal here? Or, it's like, 'cause I'm out there literally beating the street, going around, going from business to business, trying to find, these things. And, I think that's where like this attention to it has been, I think a good thing. I think it also has lowered that bar in the sense of like people who may not have previously would reach out looking for help or try to find answers. Now it seems like, oh, this is part of the pop culture now. This is part of, okay, it's not so odd or weird to talk about these things because it's more commonplace. I think that there's been some of the benefits of how it's become sensationalized. Now, of course, the opposite end, which we've talked about, it's the fly-by-nighters, it's the folks that aren't in it for any other reason but because they think it's a means to an end, to become famous or to become rich, or like, I don't know anyone who's really, a real investigator that's making their living as an investigator. It's just because one thing is you don't typically charge your clients for investigations. I've never charged a client in my 30 years. Um, I mean, but that's why you get into the publications and the books and the other things, and you hope that, and even then, like, I've probably sold 30 or 40,000 copies of my books over the last 15 years, and I'm not making money off those things. I get my quarterly check, and I'm like, $3. Like,
Yeah.
what do I do with this? Like, it's like I don't even cash it for the tax purposes. Like, it definitely, I think it's brought a lot of good. I think if we didn't have those shows and those documentaries and even some of these movies, we wouldn't have some of the folks creating these devices and building these, again, 20, 25 years ago, the portal was not a thing. The sweeping radios were not a thing. Like, all these handheld devices now that you can buy and acquire that are purposely built for investment, it didn't exist. You had your EMF meter that you could maybe, use. You'd had your standard audio recorder. You'd had your video camera, your still camera. You didn't have these really specialized devices. And I think that's one of the good things because it's brought these folks to into it. They're like, hey, I have the engineering mind. I can design, I can build these things, and I can figure out new ways and new the ways to see, because it really is, it's still an ever evolving theory, right? It's not a hard science. There are no real experts. We're all just kind of figuring out, you know, what works, what doesn't work, and I still don't feel like there's any single device out there that really is capturing it all, because 9 out of 10 times, if we're having an experience, the devices aren't doing anything. Does that mean that what we're experiencing isn't real? I don't say that at all. It just means we haven't found the right device that's capturing the right part of the environment in a way that is going to correlate to that direct experience. Because at the end of the day, all these devices, I call them weather instruments. They are measuring changes in our environment. That's all they are. Whether they're EMF, temperature, whatever, thermal, infrared, full spectrum. That's what they are. They're measuring changes in the environment, and there's no one single one of them has all the answers. And again, we'll use them multiple side by side, and we'll have the most intense experience, and they're all flat. Not a single EMF or this or that. So I'm excited to see what 20 years from now, like, what new devices and new things and new theories and new science potentially out there, because I think that, we at some point we will have the technology that will be able to cross the spiritual realm, in the sense that we can actually measure and gather and understand, like, because again, there's so much to it that we still just don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a premonition or a download of, I'd say in 2023 of, I didn't know much about quantum physics or anything, but I truly believe we will figure it out. Quantum physics is a step towards the right direction. And I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about quantum physics, but there's something going to come out of this, because we're already seeing certain things like AI start to play a part in it. We don't really know what, not to get on a different subject, but we really don't even know what's possible with that yet, because we've just tapped into the surface. So what exactly are we going to discover or find, It's
Well,
crazy.
and the thing is, in the paranormal community, we have to be open to change. We have to
Yeah.
be open to evolving theories and shedding off theories that are no longer valid, because that's how science works. The scientific method, peer review, there's those processes work, and it's how, and science is not afraid to say, well, we thought this was a planet, it's not a planet anymore, or we thought this was this, and oh, now our fundamental understanding of the universe is completely different than it was 20 years ago. Well, it's the same thing in I think all the sciences, and if you want to put the paranormal as a parascience or something like that, it's the same thing in our field. Like it's going to be constantly changing, and hopefully, as other technologies emerge and mature, then that will translate to our field as well, and we'll have that next generation device that may be like, holy cow, like we never thought this was impossible 20 years ago, but now here we are, you know, physically confirming that what we thought and what we've been experiencing is actually something that's really there, and it's undeniable that this is happening, right?
That'd be
I mean, if you look,
fascinating.
yeah, I mean, if you look at shadow people, the theory around shadow people, I mean, that has evolved and grown and changed, and there's so many different sub theories and of what people think shadow people are. And I personally, I've run the gamut of what I've believed or think they are because of just my interactions with them. It's like, well, maybe they really are some type of interdimensional thing. They're not ghost or spirit. They're just something on another plane of existence that just literally is just a sliver of what they really are, right? Or
Mm.
or maybe they're just I've even thought that some of the spirit, that the ghosts, like what if they're really just there's a time thing, and like we're seeing this ghost from the 1800s, and in reality, they're seeing us as a ghost from a period that they don't know, and they think we're some kind of strange alien. And the reality is, it's just there's a like a wormhole of time or something that's just this. It's causing that connection to be there, and that we can cross that barrier of time and space. Because I think time as a linear concept is only for us to actually be able to like have a grounding in it. But we all, I mean, again, quantum mechanics and quantum science and all that is proven that time is just another dimension. Like it's another layer. We just like to think about it linearly because it's how it's our monkey brains can process it. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, uh,
Yeah. It's fascinating. Spirit gave me the analogy a while back. It's like a book, it's layers of a book. And when you're sensitive or you're using these devices, it's just like peeling back. I call it peeling back the layers, because I see flashes of time and all kinds of stuff. But then also, too, I find it fascinating. Like when we're using the portal box, you're hearing physical conversations between people sometimes, and like sometimes it's relevant and it's in your time frame, and then sometimes it isn't. And I guess I could call it like fractals of spirits. There's different types of fractals of spirits. I've figured out, some of it's not just always what I call a fraction of trauma or your soul. It gets a lot deeper. So I'm excited too, and I really appreciate your view on the sensationalism, because most of the time nowadays, we think about that as being a bad thing because of the direction things have headed. And there for me, I feel there is a point, there is a tipping point for this, where it's going to go one way or the other, with society. And I'm not trying to bring in anything about society right now, no politics or nothing, but we're at such a precipice of like, I mean, I've known it's been coming for a while, of light and dark, black and white, but you still have some of us folks in here where we're in the gray area. A lot of people, we're in the gray area with our beliefs and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that transitions over the next 20 years. Maybe one of my kids will be into it. I'll have to pass off all this equipment to somebody. Somebody's going to do something with it.
Gonna have to pass my equipment to Ghost. Pun
yeah. I'm
absolutely
gonna I'm gonna be
intended.
I'm gonna be cremated with the God helmet.
I told
Nobody can
Angel,
have.
oh, go ahead.
Like I say, nobody can have it. It's mine.
Yeah, I told Angel during paranormal, I was joking with him because he makes different types of paranormal equipment. I'm like, we need a God helmet. And I was just kidding with him because Emily had told me about experiencing it. And I'm like, that's your next feat, right? Joking with him. But yeah, that's fascinating. I would like to try one day, maybe. But it kind of freaks me out a little bit because I already have so many trippy experiences as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I there's only one time that in the almost 18 years I've had it that I've witnessed someone using it who had a really bad experience with it.
Mhm. Okay.
And it was a fluke. It was I still don't like I think back to the moment, and we weren't even on it. We were in Gettysburg, but we were at our hotel when she used it, and it just sent her into a downward, like some kind of mental spiral that I ended up having to sit up with her almost the entire night because she just was like not. I don't know what it did. It knocked something loose. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Like I sometimes, if we are having trouble confronting a truth about ourselves, whether it's trauma, whatever, sometimes something can knock it loose and force you to have to face it. And no matter what you do, you can't turn away from it. And I think it may have been one of those moments for her where this thing that she had been pretending like it wasn't there, and she used a God helmet, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, I can't close that door or shut that window anymore. It's just pouring in, and now I got to. And that's the only thing I can. But other than that, usually it's folks have an experience, or it's just like Emily. It's like
Yeah.
it's just kind of muted everything. Like it's one of those
It's
weird
interesting.
things. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Like very loosely related, and we don't have to elaborate, but like a psychedelic experience. Like it reminds me of somebody that has a bad, psychedelic experience or something. That's fascinating.
yeah,
I'm
well
sure it's totally
that's
different, but
yeah. I mean, well, it's like I mean, you hit it. I was going to say it. I mean, why do we think clinical psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists are now using psychedelics and microdosing, because there is something to it. Like I used psychedelics in my late teens, early 20s, and it was also the darkest time for me for my PTSD, for some of the paranormal stuff. And it forced me to have to face things that from a trauma standpoint that the filter was off. There was no pretending anymore. This ugly truth that I've been denying or not being able to come to terms with. And I had to embrace it. I had to embrace it and go through that head trip and come out the other side and go, all right, that was what I needed because it really like kind of like I say it like deconstructing the id, right? It really like it tore me down to that core level. I was like, all right, and it helped me get out of like those cycles of depression and cycles of things that I thought that I was never going to get out of because I was in this subconscious trauma that was just always there, but yet I, whether consciously or subconsciously, wasn't dealing with it. When I took a psychedelic, whether it was LSD or mushrooms, it's like, oh, hello, guess what? What? There it is. Like you can't deny it, and you better strap in because the next 8 to 12 hours is going to really suck if you don't. Like,
yeah,
okay, so yeah,
yeah,
I mean, and that's why and honestly, I've experimented with psychedelics in a shamanistic way, right? In a,
yeah,
where it's like, okay, I'm opening up to the cosmos. I'm opening up to the universe in a way that, it's just another conduit. It's another tunnel, another means to that connection. And, you know, sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. It's just like all things, it's knowing that your threshold and that limit,
yeah.
maybe eating a quarter of mushrooms isn't really the right amount. It's because you end up melting through the floor and turning into
Yeah,
a puddle for 12 hours. But it's you got to learn those lessons sometimes.
exactly. I've said in previous podcasts that if it in my 20s, if it wasn't for Fungus and Tool, the band Tool, I probably wouldn't be who I am today.
Mhm.
So I mean, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, yeah. I took
It helps a
yeah,
lot of people.
I took my wife to see Tool live for the first time, her first time, and I've been a lifetime Tool fan, and it was like a spiritual experience for her. She's
Yeah,
like, she's like, they're not playing the music. The music is playing then. I'm like, mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, that's one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Great
my favorite.
band.
Yeah.
And any young folks out there, which actually I'll have to say this, like have a client that's younger, and she's in high school. She's into the same band that I was into in high school. So maybe you young folks know Tool, but if there's any young people that don't, you need to listen. Chasity approved.
Here, here.
But yeah.
What's one thing you wish more people understood about the paranormal?
Um, it's not black and white. It really is gray. And I think to truly step into that field and go and pursue it, you have to kind of live in the gray, because like I said, my early lessons was, oh, we're going all science. Well, really, that was only half of the picture, right? So you can't deny that the spirit is part of it, and it really is, at the end of the day, it's about subjective experience of how we experience it in the individual or the group. So um yeah, there's and it there's it's ever changing, it's ever evolving, uh and just be open, be open to the knowledge, be open to going on the journey to figuring out whether that journey is partly for you to understanding it for yourself, or if you're trying to help others along the way, right?
Emily, do you want to finish out where we can find him and everything? Since you're associated with some of that too, it'd be a good opportunity to pluggy wuggy.
Charlie. All right, so that wraps up the interview portion. But Mark, where can people find you?
Well, you can, if you're looking, if you want to know more about my production company and the other work that I do, trimungus.com. That's trimungus.com. We're on all the socials, Insta, YouTube, Facebook. Um, my personal page is out there on Facebook and Instagram. On YouTube, I have a super secret YouTube channel that is not so super secret, but it's my other stuff. So I'm out there, and then and same thing with Astral Paranormal. We're on Facebook, we're on Insta, we're on YouTube. We don't have a dedicated website yet, but um, you can still find us. And I'm always happy to talk to folks. So anyone who wants to reach out, ask questions, or you know, you can find me.
And we'll link
Awesome.
everything down in the description box below.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. It was a pleasure finally getting to meet you. Emily spoke very highly of you, and I definitely look forward to checking out what y'all got coming. Really enjoyed the interview. Lots of knowledgeable information, guys. Don't sleep on it. Hit the description box. Follow these guys. They got some great things coming.
Whoop whoop.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all that took the time to listen to this week's episode. Your support means the world to us. And remember, all of us have the ability to shine brightly and shed positivity even in the darkest of places. Stay safe, stay well, and light it up!